bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on SiriusXM FC.
Welcome into Game Week on SiriusXM alongside former All-SEC forward Marion Crowder. I'm Anna Witte. We are going to break down everything that happened on match day 8 in the Super League and preview the two really exciting games on match day 9. And we get to chat with the brick wall in goal for Carolina this season. Meagan McClelland joins the show. Marion, how are you? What's going on?
I'm good. I'm crazy. Gotta give, the weather is, making some things that we might touch on. But first of all, thoughts and prayers to everybody down in Florida. I will say, Anna, for me, I know all those Florida people are traveling. You and I didn't talk last week about my horrendous travel schedule to go call a Notre Dame men's game, Notre Dame and Clemson. That was the other thing. Well, that was Hurricane Helene. Right now we've got Hurricane Milton coming through. Hurricane Helene 2 weeks ago. So I live in Jackson, Mississippi, or a suburb right outside of Jackson. That's the airport I fly out of. So as you can imagine, we've got to connect everywhere, right? And the only place, if you're flying Delta, that it connects through is Atlanta. So my dad loves coming on these trips with me. He was going to fly with me. It was just going to be a grand old time. And we get to looking and we're like, dude, we're not going to make this. The connection isn't going to get to Atlanta and we're not going to get to South Bend. So we decide this at 9 a.m. that morning after we're seeing all the flight schedules, and we decide just to rent a car and drive the 11 hours to South Bend, Indiana. And I kid you not, I don't know what I expected, to be honest with you. But it is literally like driving through the state of Mississippi, which is just trees and cows and Delta, for 11 and a half hours. And it was absolutely miserable. And then somehow or another after that, we had to go get to Fayetteville, Arkansas, because I was calling Arkansas and South Carolina women's soccer on Sunday. And it was just probably top 3 worst travel experiences of my life, because it cannot surpass the travel experience when everything was shut down with that crowd strike.
Strike. We've talked about that.
I can't even.
I know. Good for you. 11 hours. I had to fly around some of the rainstorms in Fort Lauderdale. I was in Kansas City on Saturday and then flew to Florida, and we dropped a little out of the sky. And I actually think it was the first panic attack I've ever had in my life. But we're here. We're chatting. We've had some bad travel of late, but here we are in our respective homes. Thank goodness those travel days are over. One team in Florida, though, Marion, they had a really nice weekend. 3-0 win over DC Power. Tampa Bay get on the score sheet after 2 games where they go scoreless. It was Cecile Flo Nielsen. She scored a brace and then a PK goal for Carly Giamana. This leaves result for DC. They haven't had a win yet this season.
That irks me, because
I know it does. And of course I had to bring it up because this is where we kind of have a divisive opinion on the league.
I know. And I've been, I still think that they have good systems in play, right? No one from DC, no DC Power fan can come at me and be like, oh my gosh, you're so tough on me. No, I've given you the benefit of the doubt for weeks now, because I feel like I understand at a foundational level what you guys are trying to do. And I believe in that. And I still do. But you're going to have to go shopping. It is what it is. When we said that about Lexington, the same holds true right now for DC for me, because I think we're seeing them come out very strong in all of their halves, right? Especially that game against Tampa. I felt like they were strong in the first 10 minutes of both halves, 15 minutes perhaps. But by the end, they just faded. And defensively, we're not seeing improvement. But some of that, if not a hefty portion of that, has to fall on the shoulders of the attacking group for DC Power. Look, they've got some exciting talent, right? So some speed up top. We've sung the praises of all of their attackers. The build has had some positive things happen, but what isn't positive, and I'll tell you, is 2 things. The place that they are struggling the most is getting perhaps their biggest goal scoring threat involved. When they are trying to find Jorian Balcom, it's like the build is good, and then we're trying to find our goal scorer, and we can't do it. It just doesn't seem like it's on the same page. When they do find their goal scoring threats, the decisions in front of goal just are not good enough. And I think they have to look at what Tampa has done. I mean, granted, I know Tampa didn't necessarily go shopping, but they did get some players who they were waiting on visas for, and they have started to insert them consistently into the 11. And we're seeing for this Tampa Bay group how just one or two key elements, key pieces can change the entire dynamic of your team. So if I'm DC Power, I'm looking at what Tampa has done and what they've added over the last couple of weeks, and I find some encouragement that maybe they just need one or two key more elements to really hone in on what they want to do. But I mean, credit to Tampa. That was an excellent game from them. The pieces that they added, Cecile Flo Nielsen, the depth that they now see off the bench with like O'Reilly Parker coming off the bench instead of in that starting role. Natasha Flint a couple weeks ago, we're seeing her in a more consistent role as that 9. I think that they are really starting to hone in on their identity.
Tampa Bay is a team who also had experience going into the season, and you really saw that help them a lot in this game against DC. Maybe DC could take, a chapter out of the book of Lexington, a 1-1 draw against Carolina. They added a player in Claire Winter who made the world of difference in the middle of the field. It was an own goal by Madison Perez in the first half that got Carolina on the score sheet. But then the 90 plus 10-minute stoppage, Marion, it was an insane equalizer for Lexington after 10 corner kicks.
Yeah, I think the positives there, Anna, to your point, again, you're seeing one key piece, right? Yeah. Claire Winter, she was at it, and they have changed a bit, right? And now all of a sudden you're seeing them flow a little bit more dynamically, especially in the attack. They never have had problems getting on the score sheet. And as we see, though, they're starting to create even more chances. So now the conversation for their attackers becomes a little bit more about efficiency in the final third, which is not new to any teams right now that we're talking about for the Super League. And then defensively, where they're still struggling, though, is that flank space. I thought that they actually did a really nice job of the players in front of the back line. They stayed quite compact, and they, in my opinion, they really made it difficult for Carolina to build out at times. And this is a Carolina Ascent who we're talking about potentially the best defense in the league, the most solid defense in the league. And there were some moments where Lexington was committed to pressing higher up the field, and it looked good. I didn't think for a second, Anna, that they were outplayed at all by Carolina.
It wasn't even just the commitment to get forward, to your point, but it was also the commitment to get back, because Addison Merrick was getting forward, Jill Aguilera for Carolina Ascent was getting forward and really providing opportunities. So a 1-1 draw keeps Carolina undefeated at the top of the table, but things might change. It's Fort Lauderdale right underneath, Brooklyn right underneath, and things could change after match day 9 this weekend. Dallas Trinity with a 2-1 win over Spokane. Spokane with some really nice chances. They had 18 shots in this one, 82% passing completion. They got really unlucky towards the end after a potential save by Dallas. How does Spokane grow out of this one, now find themselves 6th, closer to the bottom of the table?
Yeah, I think it's tough anytime that you have put in the work, especially towards the end of the game, right? And it comes down to a decision that wasn't made by the referee. I'm going to leave it at that. Should have been a penalty kick called. As players, as coaches, you can't control that first and foremost, right? And so the biggest thing that you can do is take away the positives, that you were in a position, a very good position, to walk away with a draw from that game after being a little bit just jumbled, it felt like, throughout the entirety of the 90 minutes. Some moments that were very, very shaky for them in the back, but again, fought back, responded well, especially without Amina Ekic, who was a late scratch. That's a positive sign for Joe Johnson in terms of, hey, we've been really forcing things to Amina. We actually have a lot of different players who can be a part of this growing attack. For me, though, it goes back to just kind of this feeling of not regression for Spokane, but a plateau, if you will, from where we saw how much they improved from week 1 to week 2 to week 3. And now we're heading into match day 9, and it just almost feels like there's been a stop in the progression.
Right. Yeah, Spokane is in a position where they can continue to grow, but I think for Joe Johnson, you even see some of the tactical changes and the changes of players in certain positions, just trying to figure out, because they're still so early in the season. I mean, why not play with what you have?
Absolutely. And I mean, I actually think, and we'll preview this a little bit more in depth later, but I think the matchup that Spokane has coming this week could actually be quite interesting, and maybe one that people don't have scratched on the surface. We know Spokane is really, really good in the wide areas. But as mentioned, I'm not sure playing out of the back is their strong suit at this point. And that may make for an interesting matchup that they have this weekend.
We will get to the preview of match day 9, but we still have one game to recap. It's Fort Lauderdale United opened their brand new, beautiful stadium, Fort Lauderdale United Stadium, with a 1-0 win over Brooklyn. It was a downpouring game. A lot of fans in attendance for this one. Fort Lauderdale was able to really dominate the possession and keep the majority of this game at their tempo. Why are we starting to see Coach Mears' style of soccer really be implemented into what United is doing?
I love that question. And I feel like, we haven't had a chance to really get to know a lot of these coaches, Tyrone Mears in particular. But if you look at his playing background, he's probably the most decorated coach with playing experience that the USL Super League has in its entirety. I mean,
Premier League, MLS. Yeah,
exactly.
Go ahead.
And so he started with Manchester City right at the academy level, graduated, and we all know Manchester City, one of the great teams. He spent his younger days, kind of at Derby County. He really had a focus of the teams he was with were teams that were getting promoted to the next level year in, year out. And so it's almost kind of this feeling of starting something new. And then when we look at his time in the States with the MLS, 2016 MLS Cup with Seattle. Then he jumped to a brand new franchise that is now Atlanta United. Next year jumps to a brand new franchise that is Minnesota United in 2018. And so I just feel like he's got this sense of seeing things from the ground to success. And we're starting to see all of his combination of not only playing in the States and under some of those different head coaches and general managers, but we're also, I feel like, seeing his ideas of what winning at winning now looks like, as well as implementing a foundation for how we can recruit players to come here in the future. Because one of the things about getting big time signings, they want to see foundations and systems in place, right? They want to be able to visualize, how can I fit into what he's trying to do? And right now, it's arguable that Tyrone Mears and the front office at Fort Lauderdale United have constructed the best all-around roster for the USL Super League, which to me puts them heavily in front for perhaps getting some big signings in the spring season, next season, exciting things like that.
United even showed that they don't need Addie McCain to score and create everything, because Brooklyn did a really nice job of taking her out. And Mears, coming from the academy side of Inter Miami, where he coached, that was his last coaching position, to your point, just proves he knows the foundation of growing a club and what this should look like in South Florida. When it comes to Brooklyn and what they have done of late, this is the game that snapped their undefeated streak. They weren't able to really get Jess Garziano involved. Isabel Cox was really pushed into the wide areas. It was an all-around great defensive effort from Fort Lauderdale. The same thing for Brooklyn, but it was their brand new head coach and Jess Silva's third game she's ever coached. And I think she really learned that her team has some points where they just need to grow, get that consistency, and really understand certain environments are going to take different styles of soccer. When I say there was a ton of rain in that game, it was insane how heavy it was coming down. It was awful. Not an ideal situation, especially for a bunch of New Yorkers to play in. So the adjustment that teams like Brooklyn at this level are going to have to make to get results against a team like United are big ones. And it's just part of the growing experience in this league.
Yeah. And here's the other thing with Fort Lauderdale, right? To your point, Brooklyn, I think, has a great cohesive attack that we need to see just become on the same page a little bit more, especially in their final third decision making. Fort Lauderdale, arguably the most cohesive attacking group right now. And Anna, I mean, you were on that game, could have easily been 5-0. And so if I have to critique just something about this Fort Lauderdale side. One of the development pieces we knew with players like Shania Gordon coming into the Super League was they needed to learn how to be more efficient finishers. We're seeing that development piece still need to be worked on. If Fort Lauderdale could finish half of their chances, they'd be beating teams 5, 6, 7, nothing week in, week out. So there's going to come a point, right, where teams figure out how to deal with the individual threats of a Shania Gordon and Addie McCain, Jasmine Hamid. They're going to figure out how to minimize those chances. So it's on you as the attacker to realize that the quantity isn't always going to be there. So my quality has to have an uptick. That would be my big challenge for Fort Lauderdale moving forward.
Fort Lauderdale's lone goal in the game against Brooklyn came from a 37-minute center back sub and Reese Klein off a set piece. So it wasn't even one of those attacking forwards. It's a good thing, but it's also kind of those, hey, we got to make sure our forwards are still scoring when we get those opportunities.
Yeah, great to have the depth. Great to see it. But is that really her job?
Correct. Debatable, right? An exciting match day 8 in the Super League. Make sure to stay with us on Game Week on Sirius XM.
Bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome back to Game Week on Sirius XM alongside Marion Crowder. I'm Anna Witte. There are going to be 2 games in the Super League this week because of Hurricane Milton headed in the Tampa direction. Tampa Bay against Fort Lauderdale will be postponed, and we are sending our thoughts and our prayers towards everybody who is in the path of that hurricane. We hope that everybody stays safe today. Brooklyn takes on DC Power Friday at 7:30 on Peacock. DC Power, Marion, is in search of their first win. There's some adjustments that are needed. We touched on the fact they might need to bring in some new players if need be. But is this the one for DC where they can change things up and get those 3 points?
Needs to be, right? It needs to be. If we're realistic with this matchup, it's not going to be. That was my big push for them last week, was knowing that they were going to go into a red-hot Brooklyn team despite a loss. I still think Brooklyn is doing excellent things, specifically in the attacking third of the field. And we knew that DC needed to gain some confidence before going to face a Brooklyn team that can really put you under from start to finish. And so as much as, again, I've been on DC's side, I still am. I still think it's so early in the season in terms of like the full longevity of the schedule that things can change. But for this matchup in particular, I don't think that they have the depth at the center back position to be able to handle the threats that Brooklyn poses. I don't think the matchups are favorable in the outside back positions for the threats that Brooklyn poses. We haven't seen hardly any team stop a Mackenzie George type of player. The best way to do that is to maintain possession of the ball, right? And like we saw with Fort Lauderdale, really be on the front foot from an attacking perspective. Where they can clean up this match in particular, they don't have time to go get players and make it adjustments for this match, I don't think. But where they can clean up for this match is going to be their ability to keep longer spells of possession and don't hurt yourself with mistakes in the build out, right? Be very, very smart about where that pass is going to be from your back line into the next line. Don't force something that's going to invite the pressure of a Brooklyn team who thrives on that fast pace kind of a match. Really be strategic with your next line of passing and see if you can just win this match by keeping Brooklyn off the ball. You don't do that, not real sure that DC stands a chance this week, Anna.
Simplicity is best for DC Power this weekend. The schedule is a long one, and we don't have time today to talk about the spring schedule, but it was released last week. So if you're interested in seeing what will happen in the 2025 portion of the season, go to USL Super League's website for that. Spokane hosts Lexington, who starts their 4-game road stand. This is a 5 p.m. Eastern time kick Sunday on Peacock. Spokane is coming off that loss from Dallas where they did have 18 shots. However, this is them at home. They have really been able to create a fortress out of the Pacific Northwest, so to speak. How can they exploit Lexington, especially in the midfield where Lexington has struggled at portions of the season?
Yep, great question and great mini analysis there. Exactly what I was going to say, right? Really be consistent in the way that you build through the midfield. And then as soon as you break that initial line of pressure with your midfielders, got to be looking left to right, because where Lexington has consistently struggled, although we've seen improvements in a lot of other areas, we haven't seen improvements for how they deal with play in the wide channels. Spokane, one of the most dangerous teams in terms of their wingers 1v1 ability. So if I'm Spokane, I am collecting it centrally, drawing a couple numbers to me, looking left and right, trying to find my wingers in advantageous areas in the wide spaces and just letting them work, right? Stay out of that space. Don't try to do any overloads. Make your runs in the box, wait for the service. And if you're Spokane, that would really bode successful. But Anna, I actually do think that this could be, you asked me if it was the one for DC. I don't think it is. I think this could be the one for Lexington, because when we saw them press as a unit in their last match against Carolina, one of the best, if not the best defensive structured team in the league, Carolina struggled. They struggled to build out. I thought that Lexington made them very uncomfortable at times when their defenders had the ball, when some of their holding midfielders had the ball. If perhaps Lexington can have that same type of bite to their press when they go, they all go, they win the ball in the higher areas like we saw them do. The point of improvement has to be you're not going to create a lot of chances, right? You may create a lot of corner kicks, fine. I'll give you that. But in the run of play, your chance creation is going to be probably few and far between. You've got to be committed to winning that ball and making it an actual shot on goal, going out for a corner, making it an actual goal in the back of the net. It's all going to be about how efficient they can be after the press.
Lexington, they've got 7 goals on the season. Despite how many losses they have seen this year, they have the same amount of goals as Carolina at the top of the table. So the parity in this league is so good, and that's what makes every single match day so exciting in this league. Well, thanks so much for joining us on Game Week. Don't go anywhere. We have an interview with Carolina's goalkeeper, Meagan McClelland, right after this. This is Game Week on SiriusXM.
Bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on SiriusXM FC.
Joined by Carolina Ascent goalkeeper Meagan McClelland. Meagan, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's so great to meet you. Let's start with the fact that you've played with 3 different clubs in the States. You've had experience overseas, really unique to what this league is doing. How is your time in Carolina so far different from your other experiences?
Yeah, thanks for having me today. Carolina so far, I feel like has been super great. And I feel like it's funny. I'm on I think probably around the 3-4 month mark. So this is the longest I've been in, one spot, which, it has its positives, has its negatives, but it's been great so far. The team is great. We love our coaching staff. They really help us prepare. And I think even just off the field, it's a great area to be a part of. The fans are awesome. The community is great. And I don't know, there's just honestly so many positives to think of. Like when I sit back and think about it and people ask how I'm doing, I love it. And I don't think there's a better way to put it right now.
What's different, Meagan, just about, because you've had experience all over the place, right? Whether it's overseas clubs, in the States clubs, like Anna mentioned, you even playing at the college level, right? Like that's a different experience under your belt. What is it about the way that now that we're, like you said, 3 to 4 months in and you've had a chance to see it all kind of work, it's cool when you have like these conversations and you're like, okay, this is what it could be. But now that we're seeing what it's like, what do you think it is about the Super League that's been really fun and perhaps unique as opposed to other places you've been?
Yeah, I think it gives, a great opportunity for just to grow the game. I feel like it's almost when you come out of college, it's either you play in the NWSL or you have to move across the world or you have to give up your dream and not play. And, that's a really tough decision that I know a lot of women have gone through and a lot of women still are going through. And I think the Super League presents this opportunity for more players to be able to play, develop, and the league has been great so far. The quality has been awesome. It's not easy to just come out the gates with 8 teams. And I think the quality of players has been great. And it's great to see all the teams' different successes. And I think it's just honestly going to get better. And it's just super exciting that, that women's sports is growing and that there's a chance to play. And yeah, I just think that is just really cool. And I'm grateful to, be in the time where that opportunity is presented to me.
The quality of play has been so fun to watch, and even more specific with the Ascent, Meagan, because you guys are undefeated. You have stayed at the top of the table since week one. What do you attribute to this team's early success, even though you guys only have a few months together under your belt?
Yeah, I definitely think it's our attention to detail, and that comes, straight from the coaching staff, straight from the players that we have on the team. It's just every little thing is about details, and whether it's mentally, whether it's physically, and I think really practicing and getting those keys out on the practice field just kind of come naturally to us in the game, and it's just the little things that we may not think of that we go back and watch film, and we're like, wow, like if we weren't paying attention to this detail, this could have happened, and a lot of it is honestly just focus. We're all great soccer players, and we've all are being able to, get that chemistry down now that we're a couple months in. But yeah, for us, it's just, pay attention to detail and holding each other accountable because we're all good enough and we all trust each other. And I think in the end, that's helped us.
Yeah, attention to detail. I feel like Anna and I have gotten on here consistently and just praised you guys. It's probably the most fundamentally sound at this point through the season. A lot of that, I mean, we've talked to Philip Poole. I know Anna does, sideline for you guys often at your home games, and just hearing his principles day in, day out, and then being able to watch the 90 minutes and the execution of the system of play has been incredibly impressive in such a short time, which, I mean, Meagan, I want to pick your brain about this too. Like, I feel like we forget this sometimes because now we are a couple months in and we're getting a little bit more of a consistent rhythm, but this is still very much such an early point for so many teams. When, I mean, talk me through when you actually got signed, when you got to Carolina, when training started, and then you turn around and you're like, all right, this is our first game. Like, what was the timeline like for you guys? And just talk to me about how impressive it's been internally to watch you put together so quick.
Yeah, I think what was super exciting about Carolina was they were pretty much ahead of the game. I know Pooley was probably announced maybe January, February. I
Yeah.
don't know the exacts, but they had their branding announced. They had players starting to get signed. Conversations were being had. So I think just credit to the whole organization in general. Like they knew they were getting this team, and they were like, "We're not playing around." So
Yeah.
um, that was pretty nice. And I think just we had a couple meetings in the spring before we obviously all got together here in July, and then once July came, we hit the ground running. It wasn't today we're just going to run and today we're just going to do this. I think he has a lot of belief in us and players, and right away we were going into fundamentals, going into what our process is going to be, what our set pieces are going to look like, and I think it's a huge credit to not only the coaching staff for putting that on us right away, but also the team being able to take all that information in, and we work on it week in and week out, and it's really starting to show. And it's nice because our team is really sticks to our principles, and they're working. So we're really grateful that the coaches put us in the best case scenario to execute a game plan.
The club has done an excellent job. The players have done an excellent job. And I think you can even look at the first ever Super League game at Memorial Stadium, sold out. Just the excitement in the city of Charlotte and women's soccer in particular really shows how Carolina's gotten off to a great start. But it's crazy to think, Meagan, you have not played in a more consistent spot for more than just a few months. So when you're traveling that much off the field, what's the most important thing that you have to find first to feel comfortable?
I think for me, it's gotten to a point where, it's just confidence. I've been in the position where my contract had no physical end date. So it was just every day I was waking up, going to practice, like not knowing when my last day was. And it was just consistently having to prove myself to new coaches, prove myself to, other goalkeepers. So for me, I found a lot of it in just like confidence in myself, because it doesn't matter what team you're playing on. Like you need to, be yourself and be able to, show that you're good enough to be there, and then your teammates have your back. So I've been grateful that every single team I played on, the girls have been great. They've always had confidence in me. And yeah, I just think the moving around, I kind of got used to it, but I feel like all professional athletes know that you're always proving yourself. There's no, like, it's every day you show up, it could be your last. Like that's just how the career works. So I think we all kind of know that every day we're competing for a spot, but we're also competing to make each other better. It's a great healthy competition, and we love to push each other. And I felt every environment I was in, I learned a bunch and I pushed myself, and it's made me both a better player and person.
Two questions. One's a piggyback on Anna's about the comfort level, and then one is a piggyback on Meagan, your answer just about confidence. So that's on the field, right? To piggyback off Anna's, that's on the field, kind of how you find your bearings about you. I don't know about you, but like when we travel for games, calling games, I also have like off field or out of booth tendencies that I like really need to like keep grounded. Like one of the first things I'm like, all right, let me go like suss out the gym at the hotel, let me see what I'm working with. Second thing is absolutely coffee. I'm like,
yes,
next 4 days, like, where am I getting my coffee? Like, this is where I need to know. Do I need to walk? Do I need to Uber? Are we Uber Eating? Like, what are we doing? What did like off field comfort level thing for you has to be there?
It's a good question. I feel like off the field for me, it was just like having a roommate or two. Like, so I wasn't by myself isolated, because if you leave me alone in my room, like I'll be perfectly fine. And then I think I kind of do
I'm not coming out. Like, I'm not coming out.
And then I kind of do the same thing where I like to kind of just like get in the car, drive around the area. I used to love to do like I would get coffee maybe 2-3 times a week, and I would try a new coffee place that would make me familiar with the area. But I think it's just, getting comforted with your surroundings, and then that kind of eases yourself. Denmark was definitely probably the hardest. That was the biggest culture change and everything. But for me, it's just, being comfortable with my surroundings, and then having a couple players on the team that you see off the field that you're able to, talk to, how are things, ask any questions, and then you just kind of adapt quick. You don't really have a choice.
That's like the anchor point. I totally feel you there. Okay, so the second question to that, which kind of goes along with this, comfort level conversation. You mentioned confidence and how you find the confidence on the field. I'm curious, because as players, I was a former attacker, right? And I felt like we all, even if you talk to other attackers, she's going to find her confidence a little bit different than something that I'm going to hold on to that makes me feel confident. I'm curious, as a goalkeeper, is there a certain type of save? Is there a certain type of situation? Or is it kind of just a comfort level with the back line in front of you? What specific moment or what specific anchor makes you really feel the most confident as a goalkeeper?
Definitely. I think, my whole team, not just the back line, have really made my job easy. I feel like the few goals we've led up, we know as a team that was kind of us in our control, us shutting down. So, we clean up those details, and the team definitely makes us hard to score on without even me having to do anything. So that's definitely a confidence booster. And I think it's just, it comes with like experience. Maybe the first game or two, you're like, ooh, I'm back in the States playing, a little nervous. But now I feel like you don't really have that, oh, I just need to touch the ball once, I need to touch the ball twice, because your first shot on goal could be an absolute worldie of a shot. So I think for me, it's just, having a good warm up and just knowing my team has my back. And it's not anything about game day. You train every day, and you're doing that every day, and it's just supposed to translate into a game. So I kind of just think for me, it's more on the training pitch, doing well, getting confident, and just having the mindset to be confident, because the goalkeeper position is it's a very mentally challenging position where, you make a mistake, you can't really make them often. So I just think not only having a team in front of me, but just knowing like I'm here for a reason and I'm going to make mistakes. But all in all, we all have our own accountability. And I think that just comes, getting older, becoming a pro, and getting that experience under your belt.
One more for you, Meagan, and we'll let you go. The fact that there's only 22 starting goalkeepers every single week in women's professional soccer in the States, Super League in particular, there's only 8 starting goalkeepers. The mental health aspect of it is something you've already touched on. How has that aspect of your game evolved since you graduated from Rutgers?
Yeah, I definitely think that was a part of my game I really started to focus on, because you get to a level where everyone's good. All the Super League keepers who've played so far have made great saves, and it's honestly so great to see young goalkeepers getting a chance, because you really don't get that chance until you're like 25, 26, 27, and it's hard. It's hard to try to get that experience. So a credit to everyone in the Super League right now. But I just think a lot of it is kind of just off the field. Whether it's I've had leadership coaches, our teams have had leadership meetings, people journal, people manifest, people visualize. So I think it's just honing in on what has worked for me. I usually like to put on music and visualize a bit. And then I'm a big person after a game, going over film and just knowing that like whatever happens, as long as you learn from it, then you can move forward. So you see it happens, you maybe made a mistake, you know what you could do better, and that's just part of the self-improvement.
Love it. Love that advice. I'm sure a lot of young goalkeepers could take that advice and apply it to their game as well. Meagan, thank you so much for joining us. It was so great to get to know you a little bit better. Congratulations on this early success and good luck next week against Brooklyn. We can't wait to watch.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us this week on USL Super League Game Week. You can catch us every single Wednesday on the SiriusXM app, and make sure to tune into Match Day 9 on Peacock. For Marion Crowder, I'm Anna Witte. We'll see you next time. It's Game Week on SiriusXM.
You've been listening to USL Super League Game Week on SiriusXM FC.